Bug Scuffle? Bug Scuffle Baptist Church. Well, there you go. Bug Scuffle. I like it. All right. Well, thank you for going out and indulging us with pumpkin smashing. It's the little things in life that make it worthwhile. I thought they'd explode a little more than that. They just kind of, but maybe they're getting a little soft. All right. Well, tonight we're going to be moving ahead in the book of 1 Samuel. We're going to be starting in chapter 8. But we're also making a transition in our historical, placement in this. This chapter really marks the transition from the time of the judges, and we have some prophecy with Samuel, and tonight we're going to begin the period of the kings. And so that's what tonight's lesson is about, is going to be the people of Israel crying out and demanding a king. They don't want the judges anymore. They don't want Samuel doing it. They just want a king. They want to be like the other nations. And so we're going to see Samuel warn them about wanting to be like the other nations, but they don't listen, of course. And so we're seeing that transition where we are moving ahead in time, and now we're going to go into the life of Saul, then David, and Solomon primarily, and then the kingdom's going to divide. And we're going to see how over time, really not even over time, because Saul winds up doing it in his own little reign. The kings of Israel and then of Judah, a lot of them start out not too bad, but get worse as they go along. Other kings pick up where the king before them left off in their sin and just get worse yet. And so, man, when they have that power, when they have that ability to take that position, corruption is something that is ever present. And we see how it's very easy for man to fall into that corruption over and over again and not to follow the ways of God. We're going to start out actually with a story about Samuel's sons. Last week we ended with Eli and his two sons and how wicked they were. And now Samuel has grown up, and he's the one who's kind of in charge of things. And he's got two sons that are helping out. And we're going to see that they're not a whole lot better than Eli's two sons, though Samuel himself is such a righteous man. So starting in 1 Samuel 8, it says, "When Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons as Israel's leaders. The name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second was Abijah. And they served at Beersheba. Beersheba is way down in the south of Israel. But his sons did not follow his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain and accepted bribes and perverted justice." So, same song, second verse, maybe a little different sins, but at the same time, when Samuel appointed his sons to be over Israel, to be the judges basically over Israel, it didn't take them long to figure out a way to make dishonest gain and to corrupt that position. Hey, look at the authority I have. I'm going to need a little extra money. I'm going to need some kickbacks. I'm going to need a little bit of this. And pretty soon, they're on the take. And so this is that transition where the people of Israel said, the judges were fine, but we were in pretty bad shape when each one would show up because they came back to bring a revival. And Samuel has been leading Israel, and that has been going okay. Then he appointed his sons to take over, and immediately they went back to corruption. So the people of Israel said, we're tired of this. We're tired of the way this is going because we can't trust the people who are in leadership over our country. And so, kind of timely with the election yesterday, but hey, anyway. But they just said, you know what, we can't find good leaders. And so it says, all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah. They said to him, you are old, and your sons do not follow your ways. So they're telling him, you were fine. Your sons, not so much. They're not following the law. They're not following what God has told us. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have. But when they said, give us a king to lead us, this displeased Samuel. So he prayed to the Lord, and the Lord told him, listen to all that the people are saying to you. It is not you that they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king. And so God's ways, of course, are perfect. But the people who were representing him were corrupting the authority that they had. And so the people rejected God. We don't want God to be in charge of this anymore. We can do it better. We want a king like the other nations have. We want a person that can be over us. We want to have that authority figure that we can look to and say, this is the person we've got. So when they told Samuel, he says, you don't want that. That's not the way this is set up. We need to be following God, and we need to have people that will follow his ways. But they said, you know what? We've tried that. It doesn't seem to work. So give us a king. And so God said, it's not you, Samuel, they're rejecting. You're getting old. You can't do this job right now. It's not you, it's me. They've turned from my ways. Because here's the thing. Had Israel followed God's decrees and his commands and his laws, the corruption wouldn't have been there in the first place. But they didn't, and so the corruption was there. And so Israel, because of the mindset of man, because they weren't obedient, because they didn't follow the things God that told them to do when they took over the promised land, corruption and disobedience and everything was already so inbred, and we saw that time and time again through the judges. By this time, things are kind of out of control. And so it's hard to find good, honest leaders that are following the decrees and laws of God rather than the way man is thinking anyway. So God said, it's not you they're rejecting, it's me and my law. They don't want to live by the standards that I've set forth for them in this land. And it says, as they have done from the day that I brought them up out of Egypt until this, wait a minute, it's not you they're rejecting, but me as the king. And then it says, as they have done from the day I brought them up out of Egypt until this day, forsaking me and serving other gods, so they are doing to you. Now listen to them, but warn them solemnly and let them know what the king who will reign over them will claim as his rights. Once you appoint a king, that king has certain rights, and he has certain things that he can decree and certain things that he can do. So God says, Samuel, make sure you tell them this is what a king's going to do. The amazing thing is if you take this list that Samuel's about to list off here, and you move it up to the time of about Solomon, and you start working through the kings, every one of these things happens exactly as Samuel describes it. Down to the percentages and the numbers. He says, this is what's going to happen to you. So Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people who were asking him for a king. He said, this is what the king who will reign over you will claim as his rights. He will take your sons and make them serve with his chariots and horses, and they will run in front of his chariots. Some he will assign to be commanders of thousands and commanders of fifties, and others to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and still others to make weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and give them to his attendants. He will take a tenth of your grain and of your vintage and give it to his officials and attendants. Your male and female servants and the best of your cattle and donkeys he will take for his own use. He will take a tenth of your flocks, and you yourselves will become his slaves. When that day comes, you will cry out for relief from the king that you have chosen, but the Lord will not answer you in that day. And that's exactly what happens. The king comes in, the king starts his lifestyle, the king needs a way to support that lifestyle, he does it through taxes. The king needs an army to defend his palace and his land, he's going to inscribe people to become his army. He's going to need people to outfit this army with weapons. So he's going to take blacksmiths and stuff from the towns and say, now you are building my weapons, my war machines. He's going to need people. He's going to need crops. He's going to need wine. He's going to need olives, and he's going to need olive oil, and he's going to need, and it all is coming from you guys. Are you ready for that? And in Israel's typical fashion, we would like that. Until they get that. But the people refused to listen to Samuel. No, they said, we want a king over us. Then we will be like the other nations, with a king to lead us and to go out before us and fight our battles. That one makes me kind of laugh, because remember how they got in the land in the first place was God won all of their battles. They didn't have to go fight their battles, because God delivered the people into their hands. And now they're going, we want a king to lead us into battle. Well, you had God leading you into battle, if you remember here. Stop and think about it. He is the one that should be the king. And that's the way it originally was set up, was that it would be a theocracy, not a monarchy, and they would look to God for everything, and he would watch over and protect them and lead them and guide them, and war would be something that really was unnecessary. Because anybody that tried to come against them, God would take care of. But instead they said, no, we want to rely on ourselves. We want a king. We want to do it just like everybody else. And so that's why God is saying, they're rejecting me, because I'm the one who should be their king. And they've rejected that. And they've rejected the words that I've brought to them. So it says, when Samuel heard all that the people said, he repeated it before the Lord. And the Lord answered, listen to them and give them a king. Then Samuel said to the Israelites, everyone go back to your own town. There was a Benjamite, a man of standing, whose name was Kish, son of Abiel, the son of Zeror, the son of Bechorath, the son of Aphiah of Benjamin. So a Benjamite. It says, Kish had a son named Saul, as handsome a young man as could be found anywhere in Israel, and he was a head taller than anyone else. Perfect for a king. Big, tall, handsome, strapping lad. And he's this, make the women swoon as he walks through town. And they went, that's king material. That's what the people were looking for, is they wanted this icon, this great king. And so God knows that. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for this figure, this figurehead that they can look at and go, perfect. It says, now the donkeys belonging to Saul's father, Kish, were lost. And Kish said to his son Saul, take one of the servants with you and go look for the donkeys. So he passed through the hill country of Ephraim and through the area around Shalisha, but they did not find them. They went on into the district of Shalim, but the donkeys were not there. Then he passed through the territory of Benjamin, but they did not find them. When they reached the district of Zuph, Saul said to the servant who was with him, come, let's go back, or my father will stop thinking about the donkeys and start worrying about us. He said, we've been gone a long time. That's a very large territory that they have covered in the northern part of Israel and going down into the central part of Israel and stuff. And so they're traveling all over that middle part, that region. And he says, we've been gone a long time and we haven't found these donkeys. And so pretty soon Dad's going to stop thinking about them. He's going to start worrying about me and about you. So we probably better head back. So, but the servant replied, look, in this town there is a man of God. He is highly respected, and everything he says comes true. Let's go there now. Perhaps he will tell us what way to take. Saul said to his servant, if we go, what can we give the man? The food in our sacks is gone. We have no gift to take to the man of God. What do we have? The servant answered him again, look, he said, I have a quarter of a shekel of silver. I will give it to the man of God so that he will tell us what way to take. Formerly in Israel, if someone went to inquire of God, they would say, come, let us go to the seer, because the prophet of today used to be called a seer. So Samuel, again, is in that transitionary period. The prophets have not yet come in, the formal prophets. Now, we've had Moses, we've had Samuel himself, we've had other people that have prophesied on behalf of God and are really a prophet, but we're not to the formal prophets that wrote books yet. And so we're not in that position. We're in the kings, just getting ready to go into the kings. We're leaving the judges. So at this time, they would have these men like Samuel who had heard from God and who could speak to God and get answers from God, and they were known as seers. It's not some weird astrology thing or something like that. It was just the name that they called them because they could inquire of God, and God would give them the answers, and they could tell people what essentially what the future would be in certain circumstances. So Samuel was one of these seers, but really he was a prophet of God. And that was kind of an ancient term for them they had. It says, good, Saul said to his servant, come, let us go. So they set out for the town where the man of God was. As they were going up the hill to the town, they met some young women coming out to draw water, and they asked them, "Is the seer here?" "He is," they answered. "He's ahead of you. Hurry now. He has just come to our town today. For the people have a sacrifice at the high place. As soon as you enter the town, you will find him before he goes up to the high place to eat. The people will not begin eating until he comes, because he must bless the sacrifice. Afterwards, those who are invited to eat will eat. Go up now. You should find him about this time." They went up to the town, and as they were entering it, there was Samuel, coming toward them on his way up to the high place. Now the day before Saul came, the Lord had revealed this to Samuel. "About this time tomorrow, I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin. Anoint him ruler over my people Israel. He will deliver them from the hand of the Philistines." And so God's intent and what he is telling the people. Now again, God is not surprised by this because God knows everything. So we have to keep that in mind. But his intent is, I am going to give the people exactly what they want. I'm going to give them this tall, handsome man who's going to deliver them from the hand of the Philistines. That's what they're asking for, is this figure who could ride in on his stallion and save them from the hands of their enemies. And so God says, fine, that's what you're going to get. Now again, God knows exactly what's going to happen, but Saul had everything in his court, everything in his favor. But yet Saul was not there. He had his own corruption and his own things that we have to deal with. But God set everything in motion for him to be that king that they were looking for. And so it says, "I have looked on my people, for their cry has reached me." When Samuel caught sight of Saul, the Lord said to him, "This is the man I spoke to you about. He will govern my people." But Saul approached Samuel in the gateway and asked, "Would you please tell me where the seer's house is?" "I am the seer," Samuel replied. "Go up ahead of me to the high place. For today you are to eat with me, and in the morning I will send you on your way, and will tell you all that is in your heart. As for the donkeys you lost 3 days ago, do not worry about them. They have been found, and to whom is all the desire of Israel turned, if not to you and your whole family line." So he's saying exactly what Saul was kind of saying before, but he said, "Hey, by the way, I know you just met me, but the donkeys you're looking for, they're taken care of. They're okay. But now we're looking to you. Now we got to talk about you." And it says, Saul answered, "But am I not a Benjamite from the smallest tribe of Israel? And is not my clan the least of all the clans in the tribe of Benjamin? Why do you say such a thing to me?" Then Samuel brought Saul and his servant into the hall and seated them at the head of those who were invited, about 30 in number. Samuel said to the cook, "Bring the piece of meat that I gave you, the one I told you to lay aside." So the cook took up the thigh with what was on it and set it in front of Saul. Samuel said, "Here is what has been kept for you. Eat, because it was set aside for you for this occasion from the time I said, 'I have invited guests.'" And Saul dined with Samuel that day. After they came down from the high place to the town, Samuel talked with Saul on the roof of his house. They rose about daybreak, and Samuel called to Saul on the roof, "Get ready, and I will send you on your way." When Saul got ready, and he and Samuel went outside together. As they were going down to the edge of the town, Samuel said to Saul, "Tell the servant to go on ahead of us," and the servant did so. "But you stay here for a while so that I may give you a message from God." Then Samuel took a flask of olive oil and poured it on Saul's head and kissed him, saying, "Has not the Lord anointed you ruler over his inheritance?" So Saul goes in there thinking, maybe this guy can tell me where my dad's donkeys are. Learns the donkeys are just fine, but you need to be here for a specific purpose. Finds out that the purpose is, you're now the new king of Israel. Wow, what a day that was, huh? All in about a 24-hour period. He becomes the king, and Samuel says, "I'm anointing you as this chosen one of God. God picked you out, told me This is how I'm going to meet you. This is where I'm going to meet you. I had a piece of meat set aside for you. You are the anointed one of God. There is no mistaking it. This is who it is. It says, when you leave me today, you will meet two men near Rachel's tomb. Rachel's tomb is way down by Bethlehem, so they're south of Jerusalem in this area. He says, you will meet two men near Rachel's tomb at Zelzah, on the border of Benjamin. They will say to you, the donkeys you sent out to look for have been found, and now your father has stopped thinking about them and is worried about you. He is asking, what shall I do about my son? Then you will go on from there until you reach the great tree of Tabor. 3 men going up to worship God at Bethel will meet you there. One will be carrying 3 young goats, another 3 loaves of bread, and another a skin of wine. They will greet you and offer you 2 loaves of bread, which you will accept from them. After that, you will go to Gibeah of God, where there is a Philistine outpost. As you approach the town, you will meet a procession of prophets coming down from the high place with lyres, timbrels, pipes, and harps being played before them. And they will be prophesying. The Spirit of the Lord will come powerfully upon you, and you will prophesy with them, and you will be changed into a different person. Once these signs are fulfilled, do whatever your hands find to do, for God is with you. And so I'm going to pause there for just a second. It almost sounds like a spy thriller. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to walk down this road till you see 3 guys. One's going to be carrying a goat. One's going to be, and it's like, okay. And walk up to him and say, strawberries are in season. It's just something weird like that. And so Saul's going on his way going, man, this is really crazy. But that's exactly what they're supposed to do. And Samuel, being a seer of God, being given the message of God, lays their every step out before him and says, this is basically how you're going to know this is from God. This is what's going to happen to you over the next day or so. And every one of these things is going to be fulfilled. And I'm telling you, this is what's going to happen. And when it does, you will know that this is from God. You're going to prophesy with these men that you see coming down from this mountain. When you start prophesying with them, you will be changed. The Holy Spirit's going to come upon him. Now, this is Old Testament. This is not New Testament. This is not everybody gets the Holy Spirit when they have the relationship with Christ. He's saying the Holy Spirit's going to come upon you in a special way. You are going to prophesy like the prophets that are out there right now. People are going to see the Spirit of God on you and know that you are chosen by him and know that you are special. And so he says, this is how it's going to lay out. Then he goes on. This is still Samuel talking. He says, go ahead of me to Gilgal. I will surely come down to you to sacrifice burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, but you must wait 7 days. So all this stuff's going to happen. Wait 7 days. I'll be there to offer a sacrifice. Until I come to you and tell you what you are to do. As Saul turned to leave Samuel, God changed Saul's heart. And all these signs were fulfilled that day. When he and his servant arrived at Gibeah, a procession of prophets met him. The Spirit of God came powerfully upon him, and he joined in their prophesying. When all those who had formerly known him saw him prophesying with the prophets, they asked each other, what is this that has happened to the son of Kish? Is Saul also among the prophets? A man who lived there answered, and who is their father? So it became a saying, is Saul also among the prophets? People started talking about that. It kind of became the catchphrase of the day. Saul's one of the prophets? Are you kidding me? I didn't know that. After Saul stopped prophesying, he went to the high place. Now Saul's uncle asked him and his servant, where have you been? Looking for the donkeys, he said. But when we saw that they were not to be found, we went to Samuel. Saul's uncle said, tell me what Samuel said to you. Saul replied, he assured us that the donkeys had been found, but he did not tell his uncle what Samuel had said about the kingship. Okay. Samuel summoned the people of Israel to the Lord at Mizpah and said to them, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I brought Israel up out of Egypt, and I delivered you from the power of Egypt and all the kingdoms that oppressed you. But you have now rejected your God, who saves you out of all your disasters and calamities. And you have said, no, appoint a king over us. So now present yourselves before the Lord by your tribes and clans. So basically he called all Israel together and said, line up in order. I need Judah over here and Benjamin over here, and and just line them up. And so it says, when Samuel had all Israel come forward by tribes, the tribe of Benjamin was taken by Lot. Then he brought forward the tribe of Benjamin, clan by clan, and Matri's clan was taken. Finally, Saul, son of Kish, was taken. But when they looked for him, he was not to be found. So they inquired further of the Lord, has the man come here yet? And the Lord said, yes, he is hiding himself among the supplies. Saul was kind of timid. So he didn't know about this being anointed king thing. And so when the tribe all got together and they cast the lots and they got down to him, he's hiding over with the luggage. He's over there, I don't know about this. And so it says, they ran and brought him out. And as he stood among the people, he was a head taller than any of the others. Samuel said to all the people, do you see the man the Lord has chosen? There is no one like him among all the people. Then the people shouted, long live the king. Samuel explained to the people the rights and duties of kingship. He wrote them down on a scroll and deposited it before the Lord. Then Samuel dismissed the people to go to their own homes. Saul also went to his home in Gibeah, accompanied by valiant men whose heart God had touched. But some scoundrels said, how can this fellow save us? They despised him and brought him no gifts, but Saul kept silent. Nahash the Ammonite went up and besieged Jabesh Gilead. So we're going into this last chapter now. And so Saul, I'm just going to pause there for just a second, because Saul became king, okay? But understand the conditions of which he is king. They had this big party. They had this big celebration. They had sacrifices. They chose the tribe of Benjamin from the other 12 tribes, and they brought out the Benjamites, and they brought out each clan by clan. They brought out the members of that. And they finally got down to Saul and said, he's your king. And the people all went, long live the king. Yay! Let's go home. And they left. And Saul is now king, and he grabs a few guys to go with him, and he went home. There is no capital to speak of. There is no palace. There is no throne. There's nothing. Saul is the leader of a nation of 12 tribes. And when he needs to, he can call on them. And he's the one who leads them into battle. He's almost more of an exaggerated general at this point than he is what we would think of as a king. But he is the king of Israel. He is the anointed one of God. He is the one who is going to lead them and deliver them from the Philistines. But he's in that weird transitionary thing. When we think of a king of Israel, we think of David. He had a palace. He had a throne. He had an army. He had all that kind of fun stuff. Solomon, same thing. Palace, throne, everything. Even when the kingdom divided after Solomon, we had central locations with palaces and thrones and where the king would sit and he would hold court and he would do this kind of stuff. Saul got anointed king, got accepted by the people, and he went home. He's got chores to do. There's fields to be plowed. Hey, I'd love to stay and chat, but got chores, got to go. And so he goes home as well. The other people went home. So it says, Nahash the Ammonite went up and besieged Jabesh Gilead. So here we have the first big threat under Saul as the king. The Ammonites come and they attack Israel. They attack one of their cities. And all the men of Jabesh said to him, make a treaty with us and we will be subject to you. Now they're talking to the Ammonite king here. They're telling him, look, you're overpowering us. We're just a city here, isolated. There is no mobilized army of Israel at this time. And so he's up there and he says, look, Ammonite king there, let's make a deal. We'll become your servants if you basically just let us live. How's that sound? But Nahash the Ammonite replied, I will make a treaty with you only on the condition that I gouge out the right eye of every one of you and so bring disgrace on all Israel. He says, yeah, we'll do that. You surrender to me and I'm going to gouge all of your right eye out. Wow, that seems a little drastic. It cripples them in a sense of fighting. The men of that town, even the ladies, anything. You've lost your peripheral vision, so they're worthless as fighters to Israel, or anything else that's going to hamper them, basically everything. But the king of the Ammonites wanted to disgrace Israel. Look what I have done to them. And if anybody doesn't think that I have disgraced Israel, go look at Jabesh Gilead. Every one of them is one-eyed. And so it was a visible, physical sign that I'm better, I did this. And so it says, the elders of Jabesh said to him, give us 7 days so we can send messengers throughout Israel, and if no one comes to our rescue, then we will surrender to you. We're not ready to have you come gouge our eyes out yet. Let us send a couple letters, and if no one replies, then I guess we'll see what happens at that point. So it says, when the messengers came to Gibeah of Saul and reported these terms to the people, they all wept aloud. Just then Saul was returning from the fields behind his oxen, and he asked, what is wrong with everybody? Why are they weeping? See what I mean? There's the king. What's he doing? He's returning from his fields with his oxen. He's been out plowing. King's still got to get his chores done. And so he's back home at the family homestead working in the field like anybody else. But when this report reaches Gibeah, they said, hey, the Ammonites are over here attacking Jabesh Gilead. So Saul comes back, what's wrong? What's going on? And they tell him, and it says, when they repeated to him what the men of Jabesh had said, when Saul heard their words, the Spirit of God came powerfully upon him, and he burned with anger. Spirit of the Lord came upon him. And he says, oh, not under my watch. Ain't no way this is happening under my watch. So he says, he took a pair of oxen, cut them into pieces, and sent the pieces by messenger throughout Israel, proclaiming, this is what will be done to the oxen of anyone who does not follow Saul and Samuel. Think you want to stay home? Great, we'll be by to get your ox. He says, I cut up my own oxen, I'm going to war. I'm not going to stand by and let the people of Israel be attacked. And so he sent that message out, and he says, anyone who doesn't follow me, this is what's going to happen to yours too. So if you want to protect your home, you want to protect your homeland, anything else, get behind me. We're going to war. And so it says, then the terror of the Lord fell upon the people, and they came out together as one. When Saul mustered them at Bezek, the men of Israel numbered 300,000, and those of Judah 30,000. They told the messengers who had come, say to the men of Jabesh Gilead, by the time the sun is hot tomorrow, you will be rescued. So the men of Jabesh Gilead's like going, I don't want him poking my eye out. And they sent out the messengers, and the message came right back. Oh, we're behind you. This is really the first time since they conquered the land that the tribes fell under one control. Up to this point, through the judges, if you go back and you read the different deals, the tribes were fighting against each other at times. They were fighting over the stupidest things, but they were fighting. And so after they took the land initially, in the initial conquest, they had become 12 basically individual little groups that would work together at times or maybe help each other out here and there, but they were 12 different groups. Now, all of a sudden, for the first time in Scripture, we have Saul standing up and saying, no, the Spirit of the Lord has come upon me. We are Israel. And so for the first time, they stand as one army. They went from a few guys in Jabesh Gilead up there going, I don't know how we're going to stand against these Ammonites, to 330 men marching down the road going, we got your back. All of a sudden, there's this unity. All of a sudden, they're kind of one. But they're still, we're going to find out, until the time of David, they're still very fractured. They would come together in a time of need. If you picked on one, you picked on them all. But when there wasn't anybody picking on them, they kind of still fought with each other and just kind of did their own thing and kind of went back to their own homelands. But they said, by tomorrow you will be rescued. When the messengers went and reported this to the men of Jabesh, they were elated. And they said to the Ammonites, tomorrow we will surrender to you, and you can do to us whatever you'd like. Just wait for our 330,000 friends to show up. Then you do what you think is best. The next day, Saul separated his men into 3 divisions. During the last watch of the night, they broke into the camp of the Ammonites and slaughtered them until the heat of the day. Those who survived were scattered, so that no 2 of them were left together. The people then said to Samuel, who was it that asked, shall Saul reign over us? Turn these men over to us so that we may put them to death. Those grumblers that were at the coronation of Saul and said, I don't know, who's this guy that he should be king? They said, Samuel, you remember who those guys were? Send them out. We want to talk to him now. We like this guy. He just saved Jabesh Gilead. We just defeated the Ammonites. We're one group now. Give us those traitors. We're going to put them to death right here. But Saul said, no one will be put to death today, for this day the Lord has rescued Israel. Then Samuel said to the people, come, let us go to Gilgal, and there renew the kingship. So all the people went to Gilgal and made Saul king in the presence of the Lord. There they sacrificed fellowship offerings before the Lord, and Saul and all the Israelites held a great celebration. So we have a king. Yay! Well, not really, but we have a king. So, questions about Israel or the kingship or any of that kind of stuff? Because like I said, after the Judges and after the time of Samuel, when Samuel was growing up, Israel was very fractured. It was no longer under Moses or Joshua. It came, and even when you look at the stories of the Judges, it's not ever the nation of Israel. It's this tribe of Manasseh, or these people of Ephraim and Manasseh, or these people of Judah, or whatever. And it was still very much centralized to tribes, and they would help each other out, but they didn't have that one leader that they had when they entered the land. They had just kind of broken up and didn't see a need to really be there for each other, so to speak. They kind of had their own little city-states, their own little nations in that. But when Saul came, and the threat came at a perfect time, you know, I'm sure that was the act of God right there, bringing the Ammonites in to say, oh, these Israelites, they're a pushover. They're easy. We've picked them off before. And Saul goes, now you have to deal with all of us, all 12 tribes. And so they were able to stand up. And now they're celebrating because they realize together we are a force. And God is blessing us. We were pretty easy to pick off. And so we've started this new era of having a king. Even though they're still kind of splintered, and even though Saul is still kind of a mobile king, Israel is now a nation. And that leads us to the battles with the Philistines, and ultimately to David and Goliath. That's a couple weeks away. So, all right. Any other questions or anything? If not, I'm going to say goodbye to the people at home. Thanks for joining us for another week. See you Sunday, or see you next Wednesday.